rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He struck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd podcast.
I live in the north, and I discovered something this morning I did not know existed. The sun. Yes, warmth and the sun do exist, and they're in Fort Myers, Florida. My first job out of college was working for a minor league baseball team, so it warms my heart. Every year I go to at least one minor league park I've never been to. Last year I went to the Cubs. This behind us is the home of the Red Sox. Just down the street, the Twins have put $50 million into their new stadium. These minor league stadiums are fantastic. And Arizona and Florida are, they both got 15, 16 Major League Baseball teams. They're both the states are fighting over keeping teams, and they're building these new plush stadiums that seat like 7,000 to 10,000. Behind me is where the Red Sox play. The Red Sox minor league players, spring training. It is a replica of Fenway Park. It is unbelievable. They've got the Green Monster in there. So instead of paying, $900 to take your family in Boston, you can spend $60, park your car, walk in, and do it with your family here at JetBlue Stadium. I got a tour of it this morning. I spent my first 3 years out of college basically working in a minor league baseball park, so it always takes me back. Have a great show today. We are down here in Fort Myers, where it's going to be 85 degrees today. It has been a long winter. If it gets as hot as the Amazon today, I'm all good with it. I could have snakes around me for the next 3 hours. I don't care. I'm a popsicle melting, and it feels great. So I've said this for a long time, is that I'm really can be kind of a jerk when it comes to quarterbacks and point guards, football, basketball. I'm kind of a jerk. I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to judge you harshly, even when you're like 21. Even if it's not your fault, but you come from a rough background and you're not really mature yet, like John Wall, I'm going to be rough. Critics will just go after me. If you do the Dougie, I'm just going to destroy you. Now, if you're a forward, I don't care. If you're a receiver, I don't care. If you're a defensive end, I don't care. Quarterback, you lead the franchise. You're the franchise. I'm going to build. Everybody has to work off you. It's not that way for a wide receiver. Point guards, Kyrie Irving, come on now. It's your franchise. Not Anderson Varejao. It's your franchise. The game now is fluid. It's about space, wings, and guards. It's your franchise until LeBron got there. But if it's not for LeBron, it'd be your franchise. But I'm very lax on everybody else. It's weird, right? Defensive end, Randy Gregory. Tested positive for marijuana. Nebraska football player, really good. I don't care. I'd still draft him. Why do I care what my defensive end smokes? Now, I'm not saying the NFL should, change the punt, pass, and kick competition to the puff, puff, and pass competition. I'm not saying that. Okay? What I'm saying is I want my Delta pilot to be stable and mature. I want my fighter pilot to be a little off. I'm going to ask him to do different things. Randy Gregory, I want him to be a little off. I'm asking you to blow through walls, often head first, lunge at people, explosion, do things that most humans would say, if you wrote it down, I'm not doing that. We have a history in the NFL of some of the greatest defensive players ever being wired a little differently. Ndamukong Suh, Lawrence Taylor, Dick Butkus, Ray Lewis, Charles Haley. Randy Gregory smoked some pot. Don't care. Not asking him to be mature. Not asking him to be a Delta pilot. I'm asking him to be a fighter pilot. And it's being decriminalized in this country. It's medically available virtually everywhere. It's now legal in 2, 3, 4, 5 states. It'll be 30 by the end of this decade. I've said before the NFL was miles behind on domestic violence. I think we're equally far behind on marijuana, a sport with players having chronic pain. They should legalize it or at least turn the other way. This doesn't bother me. Randy Gregory smoked some pot, tested for it. Don't care. Jameis Winston, Mariota, really care. This don't. So it doesn't bother me this morning. It really doesn't. Johnny Manziel, John Wall, I'm watching at 21. I want to see what you do at nightclubs, first game at home, how you act, how you react. I want to know about your dad and the oil money. I always said this. I looked at John Wall's background. Franchise guy, I'm not sure. I looked at John Wall, rich, white, entitled background. Didn't like that one either. It's not a race thing. Poor, rich, let me look at your background. Quarterback, point guard. Don't care, Randy Gregory. Do not care. Second thing this morning that is profound. We all know, opening rant brought to you by Regis, New Way to Work, 1-800-OFFICES. We all know something to be true. Wayne Gretzky's the best hockey player ever. Michael Jordan's called the greatest, basketball player ever. Recently, Joe Montana was considered the best quarterback. Now a lot of people, after the Super Bowl win, think it's Brady, which I agree with. But there's a difference between being a great player and making others around you great. Steve Nash just retired. Steve Nash wasn't the greatest player, but he made everybody around him really good. That's why he won 2 MVPs. He wasn't the most talented guy. Isaiah Thomas has more talent. Magic Johnson, to me, more than MJ. Magic got to 9 finals. MJ only 6. Why? Bill Russell got to what? 11? MJ only 6. Why? Because Russell and Magic made everybody better. Michael Jordan did make the team better, but mostly made himself better. Never forget, Jordan left. The Bulls went from 57 wins to 55 and were a Hugh Hollins call from making the Eastern Conference Finals without him. LeBron left the Cavs the first time. They won 40 fewer games. 40 fewer games. Jordan, 2 less. And if not for a iffy call to get to the Eastern Conference Finals without him. LeBron James last night, the West is better than the East in the NBA. We all acknowledge that, right? It's better. The West is loaded. The East, not so much. Since LeBron has come back, the Cavs are now 14-2 against the West. Last night, they go into Memphis, maybe the best team in the West, and they win by 22. They blow out Memphis. And this is what we just have never appreciated about LeBron. He really is more magic than MJ and Kobe. Kobe often scores more, but Kobe doesn't make teammates always better. Neither did Michael. I'm going to give you proof you can't deny. Think about this. I'm going to, John, I want you to dig up really, really quickly the introduction music. I'm going to introduce you to a team that Michael and Kobe could have never gotten to the finals. LeBron James took the 2000 Cavs to the NBA Finals. This is the roster. Go ahead, play the music. And welcome to the NBA Finals, introducing your 2007 Cleveland Cavaliers. An overrated ball hog who shot 41% for his career. Meet Larry Hughes. An inconsistent 6'7" shooter, no relation to Maury Povich, Sasha Pavlovich. He played for 10 NBA teams. He's the Rand McNally of forwards. Drew Gooden. Start to giggle. His name is Booby. Nuff said. Booby Gibson. The player to always be named later, Mr. Waiver Wire, 12 years past his prime, Donyell Marshall. Now for our reserves. He's a warm body, not much else, Damon Jones. He's weird and spells Scott with 1 T. 37 haircuts means he rebounds well from one bad hair day to another. It's Scott Pollard. And I kid you not, he'll be on the bench doing everybody's taxes. Please hand him your W-2s. Ira Newble. LeBron took that team to the finals. He took that team to the finals. Kobe and Michael Jordan had significantly better teams. Couldn't get to the playoffs. They are 14-2 against the West. They blew out Memphis by 22. You can tell me who the greatest is, but Magic and LeBron. Magic 9 finals, Russell 11. LeBron's going to be in 7 more. Make everybody better. What they did last night is what he has been doing for a decade.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
All right, Jay Bilas, there's a story today about John Calipari potentially going to the NBA. I don't buy it I think Kentucky's better than 99% of the NBA jobs. Jay Bilas joining us. I think there are some college coaching jobs, not many, but they're better than NBA jobs. I don't see Calipari going to the NBA, Jay, do you?
Not until he gets tired of dealing with all the demands that come with being the head coach of Kentucky. That recruiting, even though you get to pick your personnel, recruiting can be exhausting, and dealing with the demands of being the head coach of Kentucky can be exhausting. I think his energy level is really amazing, given the demands on that position. But I think when he's ready to give up college altogether, that's really the only time I could see him eventually going to the NBA, not before.
Yeah, maybe if he gets LeBron, that's pretty enticing. Jay Bilas joining us. All right, now, I think, and I said this during the week, I think this is a huge weekend. I think the ratings will be big. We have traditional powers. I know there's a mythology with upsets, but when I look at these games, I see really interesting matchups. I want to start out west, UCLA and Gonzaga. You know, I don't know what to make of UCLA, Jay. What do you make of the matchup?
Well, UCLA's they're a good team, but they had a great draw. I mean, they played SMU, and then they got a 14 seed in the second round, or I guess they call it the third round until next year, and then it goes back to normal. But UCLA's capable of beating Gonzaga, but not when Gonzaga plays its best. They have size. They're offensively terrific, and they're way better defensively than they get credit for. So I see Gonzaga winning that one, and it could be by double digits.
All right, let's go to another Friday game, that being tomorrow, Utah and Duke. I just don't know enough about Utah. I love Duke. They've got they've got shooters. Is it a close game or a mismatch, Jay?
I think it'll be a close game because Utah is very good on both ends of the floor. They've got a pro guard in DeLon Wright, and Larry Krystkowiak runs a bunch of ball screen sets and pro-style offensive sets. And one of the things they do really well is they're big guys. They'll move out and set ball screens, and that can get Jahlil Okafor away from the basket a bit, away from the lane. I think it'll be a close game, and I would not be surprised at all to see Utah win.
All right, UCLA Zags, Utah Duke tomorrow really interests me. Now let's go to today's matchups. There's 4, the 2 that stand out to me. Carolina's got some size. They don't have a ton of perimeter shooters, so I don't give them much of a shot to beat Wisconsin, who I think has size and shooters. Your feeling on that?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think North Carolina's got to have Marcus Page play well, and I think he will. But the other thing, Wisconsin does some things that make it really difficult on Carolina. One, they control tempo. And as you know, Colin, it's easier to slow a game down than it is to speed one up. And Wisconsin's really hard to get into an up-tempo game. And the other part of it is this North Carolina team this year is a little bit easier to slow down than past North Carolina teams have been. And I do think their offensive rebounding is a huge factor, but Wisconsin is one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the country, and their big guys play out on the perimeter. Frank Kaminsky, Nigel Hayes, Sam Decker, all of them can play out at the three-point line and hit shots out there. And that's going to force North Carolina's big guys to come out there and play. And that's not something they're used to doing, nor is it something they're proficient at. So I think Wisconsin's 33-3 or whatever it is, so they can beat anybody. But I would favor them against North Carolina, no question.
A 9:45 p.m. Eastern game tonight, West Virginia at Kentucky. We know West Virginia wants to speed it up with Bob Huggins, press. We know Kentucky's length. I mean, it feels like to me they'll get every loose ball around the basket. Shane Battier says West Virginia's got a shot. Do you think they do?
Well, they do have a shot, but I think Kentucky is the vastly superior team. West Virginia presses because they've got to generate points off of their defense because they're not a really good offensive team. Their shooting percentages are really low. And the one thing that Kentucky, the question I have is how, unless they turn them over like crazy, which means 26 turnovers, because Maryland coughed it up 26 times, they were still in the game. And that was with their point guard knocked out with a concussion for a good part of the second half, Melo Trimble. So the same thing kind of happened with Louisville, Colin. Louisville is a team earlier in the season that Kentucky played at Louisville, and I think they coughed it up 17, 18 times, which I don't think they're going to do that against West Virginia. We'll see. But Louisville still couldn't score, and they couldn't score on – now, they missed a fair amount of open shots, but we're not talking about a team that knocks down a ton of open shots. And if Juwan Staten isn't fully healthy, he hasn't played particularly well in the tournament. He played okay against Buffalo, did not play as well against Maryland. You just wonder, can West Virginia generate enough points? And the one area they're going to have to do it, they're going to have to turn them over, and they're going to have to get a ton of offensive rebounds and second shots. If they don't do that, I don't think they can beat Kentucky.
Jay Bilas joining us to Herd on ESPN Radio. There was unsealed documents now, USC, and I read it yesterday. I was alarmed, and you have been a big critic of the NCAA, by the sanctions based on what they actually had as knowledge. Committee members who were voting said, yeah, we don't really have any proof of wrongdoing by Todd McNair, yet they came down and dropped the hammer. I don't know if you read those, but it did, to your narrative, it was kind of confounding to read it. Should I be surprised?
No, you shouldn't be surprised. I think what we've seen time after time with the NCAA and the Committee on Infractions and the way that their enforcement arm works, whether it's the USC McNair case, and I did read all those documents, whether it's the Cam Newton case, Ohio State, Shabazz Muhammad at UCLA, the whole Miami debacle, the Penn State handling. What we've seen is that is an enforcement arm that, if not out of control, needs to be taken out of the NCAA purview. That the United States Anti-Doping Agency, the United States Olympic Committee, they resolve their disputes in front of the American Arbitration Association. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for the NCAA. That strikes me. This whole thing strikes me as kind of kangaroo courtish, and there are some really good people involved there, but those emails were beyond embarrassing, and I think the NCAA should be ashamed of itself for allowing this to happen. It's awful, and I think it calls into question all of these different investigations and all of these adjudications. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, I mean, memo to government officials in the White House on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in the NCAA. Walk down the hall. Stop sending emails. I read those emails, Jay, and it's like they think they're invisible. This stuff always comes out. So your criticism of this organization, about twice a year, you're proven right. And I don't think that matters to you, but you are.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I would like for them to act properly and to do this the right way. It's not that hard. These things are too important. There's too much at stake, and there are too many reputations at stake. Like, where does Todd McNair go to get his reputation back? They ruined his career.
He can't.
Just go back with the Miami investigation, and when they slammed USC, Paul D., the AD at Miami, was in charge of the Committee on Infractions and had a lot of interesting things to say publicly, including high-profile programs demand high-profile compliance. Then when his hand was caught in the cookie jar with Nevin Shapiro, when he was walking him out to midfield and handing him awards and accepting checks from him, then Paul D. says, hey, I didn't know. And you start, wait a minute now. That's when the level of, I've always been careful to say, look, there are contradictions. That time you said, wait a minute, that is hypocrisy of the highest order. And this has to change. And I don't know how many times the NCAA process has to be shamed before we can say, you know what, enough. It's time. The membership needs to stand up and say, we've had enough of this. We're not putting up with this anymore.
Colin Cowherd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
We all have gut instincts. You hear a story sometimes, and you know the story doesn't sound right. And people can say you're jumping to conclusions, but a lot of time it's called thin slicing. A lot of times it's right. When you walk into a room, I've told the story years ago when I was in Vegas, went to a party with an ex-girlfriend, and I walked into the room and my body temperature changed. I'm like, this is trouble in here. I could just tell instantly. It was the velour shirts, the music, the dudes, a little sketchy looking. 3 seconds, 5 minutes later, I go to the bathroom. There's heroin. There's coke on the table in this room. I didn't see it. How'd I know it? Because you know. You know. You kind of feel it. Trust your gut and instincts. You're usually right. I said this yesterday. When I heard that story about that airplane, that German airplane, Spain to Germany, crashing in the Alps, 36,000 feet to 8, never stopped at speed, ever. And by the way, they found the black box. I said, I'm sorry. Said it yesterday. Planes don't work that way. Planes don't work that way. They found the black box. One of the pilots locked the other pilot out of the cockpit. He crashed the plane. It's awful. It's terrible. You can't imagine the fear going through people's mind right there. But according to the latest report to the box, you can hear a pilot banging on the door, wanting to be in, and the 28-year-old young kid who was mentally unstable, clearly, rational, reasonable people don't do that. No idea why he was unstable, no idea the circumstances around his life, but you know, planes don't do that. I fly down here, you fly down here, we all fly everywhere. If you look domestically, we have almost no crashes with commercial airlines. I mean, it's amazing, really. Almost none. We had one a few years ago in Buffalo, inexperienced, really bad weather. Weather's usually the problem. Pilot error occasionally, but now these things they don't fly themselves on takeoff or landing, but a majority of the flight, they sort of fly themselves. That's why airlines through the years have reduced pay for pilots, because it's pretty much a takeoff and landing business. That said, I love my pilots. Just keep avoiding those lightning storms. I love my pilots. But awful news on that story, and it appears to have a sinister ending. Good to have you in today. Great first hour, Jay Bilas, hammering the NCAA. There are times I've said we need to understand the NCAA does some good things. If you look at poor kids getting a college opportunity, that is magic. Breaking cycles. That's American magic. And I also think it is incredibly difficult to put on an NCAA basketball tournament. You handle all the hotels, all the transportation, ground, air, all the meals. They put on an NIT, an NCAA, a wrestling championship simultaneously. It's amazing. They deserve credit. But when it comes to punishment, they are awful. It's insidious. It is inconsistent. It is agenda-driven. If you look at the documents on the USC football case, they hammered that university. And voting members acknowledged through emails, yeah, we can't find any wrongdoing here. You got to be kidding me. I understand if you thought it was sketchy, had a picture, okay. 4 scholarships, bowl loss, I get it. You can't let them get off scot-free. But when you're hammering an institution, I got to see proof. I got to see wires connecting here. You got to give me something more than, we don't really have anything here. And you hand over sanctions that would largely kill all but about 3 football programs in the country. To show you the power of USC's brand, they've withstood it. And this year, not saying they will, they're good enough to win a national title. They've got enough good players. I'm not saying they will, but they're good enough to win this year. If they don't, you can't blame anything. There's about 12, 15 teams, Ohio State, Auburn, Alabama. They're good enough to win. I'm not saying they will. It's incredible. The other story today about Yahoo Sports, would John Calipari return to the NBA? And I think there's a handful of college jobs that are better than NBA jobs. Not many. Duke, Kentucky. I think there's a handful of college football jobs that are better than almost every NFL job. You know the ones. There's probably about 10 between college basketball and football, because pro coaching pays more. You don't have to worry about boosters and academics. It's a better job. Pro pays more. You can keep your assistants. I mean, the NFL, assistants don't constantly move team to team. And in college, everybody's looking to upgrade. It's so transitional, players, coaches. But I'll tell you this. If you ask yourself right now, in the world, including Israel, I mean, you can go to European basketball, you can go Middle Eastern basketball, college, pro, AAU. The best basketball job in the world is whoever's coaching LeBron. That's number one. Absolutely, definitively, inarguably. You've got LeBron. That's the best coaching job in the world. Wherever he's at. He's at Cleveland, that's the best job. What's the second best job in America right now? The world to coach basketball. It used to be, without question, the Lakers. But the world's changed. And they're a year away, not months, over a year away from having real, legitimate, big-time Kevin Durant-level free agents available. And now that Jerry Buss has passed and Jim and Jeannie are running it, we don't know if they have the magic that Jerry did. We don't know. Still yet to be proven. The West has never been deeper. The Clippers are now good, share the building. I'm not sure the Lakers is the second best job in basketball. Stanzik and I were talking this morning. He still thinks it is. I think it's in the running. But couldn't I make an argument? Duke and Kentucky, where you control your personnel. If you got a bad kid, you can cut him. No bad contracts. Most power in the country, or at least in your state or your conference. I could argue Duke and Kentucky, outside of whoever coaches LeBron, is the best basketball job. I mean, there is so much instability in the NFL and the NBA. I've always said about the NBA Coach of the Year award, all it is a reminder you'll be fired in 12 months. That's all that is. So I don't see Calipari. The only way to me Nick Saban would go to the NFL if he got ownership equity. If somebody said, I'll give you 7% of the franchise and $7 million a year, then I think Nick would do it. But owners don't like to give away equity. So, Mark Cuban is not looking to give up percentages of the Dallas Mavericks. So I don't think Calipari, Nick Saban, unless you're getting NBA or NFL ownership, why would you leave? I wouldn't. Ryan, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Ryan, go ahead.
Hey, Colin, what's up, man? I agree with you on so many things. It's ridiculous. But right now, the best job coaching LeBron, I'm not sure. Coaching him 5 years ago, maybe. Not right now, though. Probably have to go Kevin Durant or somebody like that.
Best player in the league, easily. There's no who's the second best player in the league? Who is it? Westbrook shoots 42%. Guard, small, elite defender, no. Elite rebounder, no. LeBron's an elite rebounder, defender, scorer, teammate. LeBron's the best executive in the league. He puts teams together now, better than GMs do. There is no. Who's the second best player in the NBA? Durant can't stay healthy. Not an elite defender, frail physically, skinny. Westbrook, 42% shooter. By the way, Westbrook, last night, once again, when Westbrook only plays for the Thunder, they're like 5-13 against teams over 500. That's not even great teams. You just have to be better than 500. There's a lot of miles on LeBron. Yep, but he's got about 4 more years like this. For the next 4 years, best job in the world is coaching LeBron. You LeBron haters, who is the second best player in this league? The gap. I mean, when Jordan played, there were guys at the end of their careers, Magic and Bird, that could change things. Who's the second best player in the league? Westbrook? They may not make the playoffs. LeBron got a team to the finals where Larry Hughes was the second best player. 41% career shooter. There is no second best player in the league. LeBron's the best player and the best executive. That is not even an argument. You can argue about stuff with me. That's not even an argument. If you ask John Calipari tomorrow, would you go to the NBA? You know what he would say? Oh, God, no. Unless you gave me LeBron. He would say that. I think he has, actually. They are hated, and I love them. Dynasties. I think Kentucky's going to beat West Virginia, and they're going to beat them soundly. Shane Battier thinks West Virginia's going to win. I think Kentucky's going to beat them soundly.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Vince and I and Dan were talking about this morning, about that German flight that crashed into the Alps. And I said yesterday at the end of the show, 36,000 feet into a mountain, never slowed down. It's sinister. It was. One of the pilots locked the other pilot out of the cockpit. And I told the guys this morning, I said, I guarantee you the 28-year-old either had a breakup with a girlfriend or there's, mental illness, generally speaking, you have to pass enough tests to be a pilot in America. It would be spotted by your co-pilots if they're. But I said, when you get into a cockpit, you don't know what that guy did last night. Did somebody break his heart? Did he lose all his money gambling? You don't know. The only thing you know is he didn't get drunk because you can smell it and they won't allow it. And there are stories now that the young pilot, 28 years old, was on a suicide mission. So, again, the instincts on this was this kid was dealing with something that was dark. And it is so strange that I was thinking about this 2 days ago, just driving around. And I knew I had to fly. And I'm not an anxious flyer, but my wife is, so I knew she had to fly down here, and she's always anxious. And they have reduced what pilots make in this country. Delta did it years ago, Northwest, United. Because increasingly the belief is it's just takeoff and landings, they fly themselves. But you don't want to keep reducing, and I was thinking about this, I don't think you want to keep reducing the value of pilots because the quality of people you will get will be reduced. It is a proud job. It is an important job. You can say all you want. I have been in rough weather. That guy is your surgeon. He's got your life in your hands. And I think what we've done in society is we have devalued pilots. Don't. You need, and that, I'm not saying this kid didn't have quality. It could have been some mental health issues. But you need to take them seriously. You need to get quality people. If they need help with the stress of the job, they need to have access to help. These skies right now have 7,000 planes in them. You need people who, if they have problems, can get help mentally, mental issues. I mean, I just think we've so devalued pilots because planes can do more. And I was reading a story the other day about robots are going to replace almost half the jobs over the next 20 years. That's the prediction. That sounds a lot like flying cars and 3D TVs that were going to take over the world. Yes, we know, and we're seeing it now, that low-skilled workers are in the crosshairs of what is happening in America with robotics and technology. That's been happening for 15, 20 years, no question. But I was hearing about flying cars when I was 7. I'm now 51. I was hearing about everybody would have a 3D television when I was 8. I'm now 51. Yes, robots are replacing low-skilled workers. But if you have locally or nationally a unique voice, a unique skill, a unique take, you'll be fine. Planes still need humans flying them. Most jobs, I need that cognitive ability, that human touch. I know robots are great, but I want somebody up in the cockpit I can look at in the eye. Somebody I trust. We've devalued them. Good to have you. This story is great. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Caller Click today. I like Tom Coughlin, and I think people in New York like him. Last year when the Giants were struggling again, it was remarkable. It was a 50-50 split in New York. Half the New Yorkers wanted him gone. But despite the fact they've gone, 5 or 6 years, no playoffs, half of the New Yorkers were outraged at the thought of firing Tom Coughlin. Giant fans are less radical than Jet fans, higher self-esteem, not reactionary, tend to be an older, smarter fan base. Jet fans are younger. They're crazy. They play in the shadow. Like Mets fans and Jets fans, they play in the shadow of the Yankees and the Giants. Giant fans tend to be older, more mature. They've been through ups. They've been through downs. They've had success. It's a very high self-esteem fan base. They don't overreact. They don't go crazy on free agency. Once again this year, the Jets go crazy, do backflips on free agency. The Giants don't. But when Tom Coughlin in his future, and I was kind of on the fence with it. Do what you want to do. I get if you bounce him. I get if you keep him. But you got to love Coughlin. Coughlin yesterday was talking at the NFL owners' meetings to some of the media, and he was talking about smartphones and how he gets help from his grandsons, 11-year-old grandson, 11-year-old granddaughter on technology. And so he's 68 years old, the Giants head coach, And he revealed Wednesday at the meetings he has an iPhone and he's willing to use it. But Tom Coughlin said it's not easy. He was trying to find his grandson's roller hockey game in suburban New Jersey. Quote, I don't trust the lady in GPS. She always sends me the wrong way. Coughlin said, so I hit the button and she gives me directions. And I find out where I am. And the lady on GPS gives me the directions, and I say, said Coughlin, thank you very much. I know exactly where I am. And the lady on GPS comes back and says, you don't have to thank me. I swear to God, said Coughlin, that's what she said. You don't have to thank me. And I told her I couldn't get her to shut up. She was like, take a right here, take a left there. And I'm like, I know where I am. I'm a block from my house. Tom Coughlin, Super Bowl winning coach, is screaming in his car at the Siri lady, who, by the way, is Susan.
It appears to be raining.
By the way, the voice of Siri is Susan Bennett. We tried to get her on the show today. I love Tom Coughlin. I told her, shut up. I'm a block from my house. I know where I am, lady.
Putting style in black T-shirts. It's Colin Cowherd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
Louis Riddick is joining. You know I love Louis. He's a scout. He's a player. He was an executive. He was a personnel guy. When the draft comes around, everybody sees Kuiper and McShay. I love them too. Go to Louis Riddick. Okay, Louis, I'm getting some pushback today. I'm getting some pushback, Louis, because I said that I want certain things from my Delta pilot and something else from my fighter pilot. And I want my quarterback to be Russell Wilson. I don't care if my wide receiver or pass rusher is imperfect. He's going to be a little off. So is Ray Lewis and Ndamukong Suh. The Randy Gregory drug failure is not scaring me if I like the fundamentals of his game and he fits my defense. Am I wrong? Am I right? How do you feel?
Well, Colin, I mean, it depends on what exactly is it that you're dealing with when you're talking about Randy Gregory in this failed test. And unfortunately, it looks like you're dealing with a pattern of behavior here that could come back to bite you if you just flat out ignore it and say, hey, look, it's just a little bit of weed. You know, it's something that will be cured by, you know, the natural maturation process into his adult self. It'll be cured by a good, you know, support program in the NFL, depending upon which team he goes to. If you just take that kind of simplistic viewpoint, I think you're kind of treading on, you know, you're treading on shaky ground if you do something like that here because, look, he failed 2 tests when he was at Nebraska. He fails a test at the Combine knowing he's going to be tested there. So you got an accountability issue. Either you have an accountability issue, you may have an intelligence issue, you may have an addiction issue. And I'm not saying that the kid has an addiction issue. I'm just saying this. You better make sure you cover all bases and make sure you have a plan so the kid is available to you. Because right now, I mean, he's in stage 1. Hey, you don't want to be drafting someone in the top 10 like Randy is projected to go, and rightfully so, because as a 34 outside backer and as a pass rusher, I think he's he's the best prospect at that position, I believe, in this draft. But it's all about availability, man. That's what it's all about.
Vontaze Burfict, I watched him at Arizona State. He was the best defensive player, in my opinion, in the conference. He goes undrafted.
Yep.
Then he goes into the NFL, and he leads the league in tackles. This is a bottom-line business, though. And if you have a weakness, I mean, let's be honest. Coaches only get fired for one reason. They don't win enough games. Don't you have a locker room full of guys, Louis, that you just don't know what's going on at home?
Absolutely. You absolutely do. And you know what? Let me just put this in perspective for Randy Gregory. I'm not saying Randy's not going to have a great career. I hope to God he does. And I know there's going to be teams who are – look, I'd be sitting there if I had all the information in front of me about Randy. I'd be sitting there if I'm a team drafted late in the first, in the middle of the first going, man, I hope he falls down to me. If I felt comfortable knowing that I could get a hold of him. It's just this. It's just when you're picking in the top 10, maybe even top 5, and someone has this kind of risk profile – look, it's not something it's just not something you're comfortable with. It's something that can scare you off. I've been with teams where we would have taken him all the way off the board. I've been with teams where you would have moved him down. I've been with teams where, you know, rather I've talked with people who would say, look, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. But look, remember, people said this also about, there was also this kind of speculation and this kind of concern about like a guy like Josh Gordon. It's not, you can't just say it's just weed anymore because weed will get you booted right out of this league as well, even though it's legal in some states to smoke. Weed will get you booted out of the NFL if you aren't careful. And Randy Gregory is a guy who deserves to be in this league. He plays a premium position. He's a kid who a lot of people covet and a lot of people want to work with. I just hope he has it under control. And the team that drafts him has a plan to make sure he has it under control so he can have a 10, 12-year career.
Yeah, I think if you and I were in the same room, we would just be on different sides. I would be take him, you would be not take him. Now, take my audience when you work with the Eagles and Redskins. Did you don't have to name the player, you can if you want. Did you have this sort of situation, and did it divide the room?
Well, sure. I mean, you always have situations that divide a room when it comes to character on players and or their skill set. You know, those are the two things that you're always trying to judge. Is this guy's personal football character good? Some people will say yeah. Some people will say no. Some people say it's something you can handle. Some people will say we need to move on down the road. Then you have the skill set that also comes into question. Some people say he fits what we do. Some people say he doesn't. That's the beauty of the subjectivity of scouting. So you can have two guys look at the same player, have the same set of information and facts in front of them, and they'll come to two totally different conclusions. And let me say this, Colin. I'm not saying that I wouldn't necessarily take Randy Gregory at the right price. I don't know all the facts about him, you know, being on the outside, and there's teams on the inside who will know all the facts. I'm just saying this. There is a red flag, and the risk profile goes up. And if you're drafting in the top 10, you've just got to be careful with this.
Okay, what about this? That a lot of people believe in this draft, it's not one of the stronger drafts.
Yep.
There are certain positions it is really weak. And that if Gregory, and it sounds like you like him.
I do a lot.
Okay, so there may not be a lot of guys that Louis Riddick likes a lot in this draft, and you like him a lot. Does that potentially change it? Where you don't have 7 guys even close to Gregory, you need him. Louis Riddick likes him. He's got this profile, but the quality of the draft this year is so weak that you roll the dice because of that.
Sure, without a doubt, that affects GM's decision-making process.
Okay,
and it muddies the water for sure. For sure, and that's the tough part about it, especially when you know the supply is not there, and the demand for you is high, the demand for other teams is high, and you know if you pass, someone's going to take him. And what if GMs play this game all the time? What if he goes somewhere else? I passed. He goes somewhere else and just rips it up. Then I got an owner looking at me going, now why didn't you take him? Now if you did take him and he does bust out of the league and he does smoke his way out of the league, you got an owner going, didn't you see the red flags? Now why did you take him? That's why GMs right now, they're looking at this going, okay, how do we assess this and how do we value him properly? And it's tough. It's tough. It's a tricky situation.
You know why another reason I give him a pass? Because I don't believe currently we know that marijuana is addictive. If it was coke, I would be out.
Right.
And there's part of me that looks at it and thinks there's a reason our government, well, I should say our local governments, our feds don't like it, but we're legitimizing pot. We don't believe there to be a highly addictive quality. That is another reason I look at this. If it was heroin, LSD, coke, meth, but there's a part of me, and maybe I'm too West Coast, Louis. Maybe I got too much Cali in me. But I'm like, I've known guys that smoke pot at 17 and don't smoke it at 27. Is that part of it?
I'll say this. Let me address that in this way. In my entire playing career, whether it be, just starting in college and going on through to the pros, no one wants, though, despite the fact that you can argue whether or not marijuana is addictive or not addictive, whether or not there's evidence for that, no one ever told me this, though. No one ever told me that marijuana was going to help me play better. No one ever told me that I'd be able to hit better, run faster, think better on the field, think more clearly, make better decisions, have more availability. No one ever told me that. So strictly from that point of view, if you just wanted to boil it down to that, I just don't see why the draw of smoking a little marijuana is more so than abiding by the rules and keeping your rear end in the league instead of smoking your way out of the league. That's the issue that I have with it. Is it that important to you that you're willing to risk your career as the rules are right now, which is you keep doing this, whether you think it's addictive or not, you're going to be out of here. Just look at Josh Gordon. That's the most recent example. If you keep doing these kinds of things, they're going to kick you out. Is it worth that? And to me, no, it's just not.
Player, scout, executive, analyst. Have a good weekend, bud.
You got it. Thanks, Colin.
Louis Riddick.
You're in the Herd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
Pacers and Colts. Despite stable organizations, nothing but trouble. Why? Nothing for athletes to do. Cincinnati, Minnesota, nothing but trouble. Jacksonville, nothing to do. Jets don't have any problems. I mean, seriously, Giants outside of Plax haven't had many problems. New Orleans doesn't have the problems. Darren Sharper's obviously a disaster of a human being. There's stuff to do, though. Oh, so this was amazing. You know, everybody knows I like LeBron James. I mean, you know I like him because he's great, right? And I root for excellence. I like Tom Brady. I like great teams. I like Kentucky basketball. Last night they go into Memphis, win by 22. And I was saying this, is that as great as Michael and Kobe were, the most underrated basketball players of our life, of our time, are Bill Russell and Magic Johnson. Bill Russell got to twice as many finals as Michael Jordan. Who cares if he didn't win every one? Who cares? He got to him. Michael Jordan could have possibly been to more finals, but he was selfish early in his career. He was selfish. Kobe could get to more finals, but he doesn't elevate other people. I'm not saying Michael Jordan and Kobe aren't great players. Michael Jordan took shots away from other good players. Magic got the 9 finals. MJ 6. What's more impressive? I'll take 9. Seriously, I've never docked Peyton Manning. When he got to the Super Bowl against Seattle, he got there. 2 teams do. I don't think more or less win or lose that game. He's got a Super Bowl win, and he's great. One more, one less isn't going to change how I think of Dan Marino or Peyton Manning. What LeBron does, and Michael and Kobe do not and cannot, because it's not their DNA, LeBron makes everybody better. That's why he's always been more Magic Johnson than Michael Jordan. Magic Johnson made everybody better. Michael Jordan didn't. Michael Jordan punched teammates. First 4 years in the league, couldn't get along with anybody because he was a ball hog who didn't pass. And the example I use is Michael Jordan left. The Bulls went from 57 wins to 55 and were Hugh Holland's call from getting into the Eastern Conference Finals. The Cavs were the worst team in the league. LeBron got them to 60 wins. He leaves. They go back to 19 wins. It's not a coincidence. He goes to Miami. They win titles. Dominate 4 straight years finals. Leaves. They're garbage. Michael left. Team won 2 fewer games. It's not a coincidence. So if you go look at what LeBron did last night, since he's come back, they are 13-2 against the West, and they crushed Memphis last night. And I want you to go back to 2007. Google it right now. Look at the roster that LeBron James got to the finals. Awful. Second best player was Larry Hughes, a 41% shooter. Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Lithuanian, could hit a jumper pretty good. But it was a bunch of Drew Goodens, Boobie Gibsons, Donyell Marshall, Sasha Pavlovich, Damon Jones, Scott Pollard, and a guy on the end of the bench to do your taxes, Ira Newble. Yeah, that was your starting lineup. That was your lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Garbage. So as much as we are fascinated by Michael Jordan and Kobe did not always make people better. Bill Russell and Magic and LeBron do. Bill Russell made everybody better. Magic always did. LeBron always does. But we are into man worship, and we worship Jordan. We worship the star. You had to pry the ball out of MJ and Kobe's hands, and that wasn't always good. You've had to sometimes convince LeBron to take more shots. I'll live with that personality. Jay Bilas, Paul Feinbaum, Louis Riddick. Thanks to all. JetBlue Park, Fenway South, Baseball Stadium. Good stuff today. 77 and free crab legs. I'd like to thank anybody who had the foresight to send me here.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
I'm Buster Olney, and on the latest Baseball Tonight podcast, we review what may turn out to be the best pitching performance of the year, and I've got a great trade idea. You can download it from ESPN.com/PodCenter.
Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. That one is gone. A pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.